Why hello there! Today I will be making the first anniversary cake from New Horizons. One, because I would like cake, and two, it still doesn't feel real to me. I want some sort of way to celebrate and to really feel like the game has been out for a year. I should disclaim real fast that I have never made a cake before. Somehow I completely missed the cake baking and decorating fad of 2010 to 2015. Never once tempted to bake a cake, never once tempted to decorate a cake. So today will be my first attempt. That being said, don't expect much of this cake. To start off, I made the sugar cookies. Here I am rolling them out, and there's 4 of them and different parts of the cake: a tree, a ladder, another tree, and then the construction hat. And I just made my own little templates, drew them out on parchment paper, and then took a knife to cut them out. I did straight lines as much as possible, as dragging your knife through to do a curved line is more likely to tear up the dough and make it look less even and nice. But then I just went back after doing straight cuts, and anywhere that needed to be curved, I just tapped down until it was curved. With these cookies, there was definitely a lot of fixing them once I placed them onto the pan. There's the cedar tree being finished, and now we're going into the apple tree. But in the end, as long as you get the shape generally right, that's what matters, because when you bake them, they're gonna expand a little bit, and so you also want to cut your templates to be a little bit smaller than you want. I'm sure there's an exact science to it out there, but I don't know what it is. With the ladder, I did perfectly straight cuts, but when it baked, they kind of bulged out, so I just had to go back through later and cut things with a knife. So you might want to do that if you don't like the shape when they're done. And here we are with the hat. And any little bumps, I just went back and pushed them down, and there they are done. And there's the ladder with the sides cut off, and I'm going in with royal icing, starting with the outlines, and then once all the outlines are done on them, I go back and flood the cookie with more icing. And I've never done this before, and I hated it. I think the icing was just a little too thick for flooding. Also, trying to get the icing to be the color I want was a whole lot of pain. I thought I'd do a good job because I mix colors with acrylics a lot to paint paper mache, but since I'm trying to match a specific color from a game, it was very tedious just doing this and that, and then finally giving up and settling on a certain color or whatever. And moving on to the cake, I decided to do a box cake, and I've heard you can make them taste just as good as a homemade cake if you replace vegetable oil with butter and double it. And then you also switch out the water for milk and add 1 more egg. I ended up going through 18 eggs for this recipe because I made 4 box cakes, and then I used them in other things like the cookies. It was crazy. I ended up not using the 4th cake. It's in the freezer now, but I used the 3 other cakes. Also, I'm using yellow box cake here, but I'm pretty dang sure the actual cake in the game is a sponge cake. And there I am pouring it into a lined pan. I've never lined a pan with parchment paper because I've never cared about it looking nice when it came out. This definitely helps get the cake out and help it look as beautiful as possible. And then I did a smaller pan for the cake that's gonna go on top, and I tried when I measured it to just do it as tall as the other one because I didn't need to use as much batter because it's a smaller pan, just trying to do the same height as the other one. These 2 that I'm pouring right now ended up being the thicker top layers, and then I go back later and make 2 more cakes that are thinner for the bottom layers. Into the oven and out of the oven they go. And there it is. I actually put it in for a little longer because it was a little bit jiggly, but you get the point. Came out of the oven. And there they are the next day, all wrapped up, cooled down, and ready to start day 2 of making a cake. My first step is cutting them into the sizes I need and also leveling them so they don't crack or the top doesn't slide off or anything like that. I didn't do a perfect level, but close enough. And now I'm stacking them on top of each other so I can cut off the roundish bits. I used a casserole dish to bake the cake, so they're a little bit round, and I'm just going in, cutting off all the round parts. And once all the rounds are cut off, I'm gonna go back and measure it to be the exact dimensions. You can tell by the streamers on the side of the cake in the game that the bottom cake is a 3x5. So you just take that, decide how long you want each unit to be, and there's the dimensions of your cake. In my case, I decided each unit would be 2 inches, so I came up with a 10x6 cake. And you do the same thing for a top. It's 2x3, so I did 4x6. And you actually end up cutting off a lot of cake. I was shocked. Luckily, I do have a use for this cake that we will see down the road. There we are, the teeny tiny cake cut. Ends up being so much smaller than you thought it would. If I didn't have to cut off the round parts, I'm sure I would have a much bigger cake, but I had to. And with our cakes cut to size, it's time to fill them. And it is filled with fruit. It looks like pineapples, so gotta cut up that pineapple. Here is the top coming off. And I won't show you cutting the whole pineapple, but whenever I have pineapple, it just reminds me of the scene from Only Yesterday when they get one and they're super excited and they have no clue how to cut it. And then they figure out how to cut it and they hate it. I actually really like pineapple, but I always think that I don't like it until I have it. I think every time I do have it, I like it so much that I eat too much and then I get sick from all the acidness of it. And next up are strawberries, which I actually really enjoy, but you're always afraid of getting a bad strawberry, so I don't eat them very much. I think that's the thing with fruit, you just never know if it's gonna be good or not. And mandarins, which I'm just peeling here and separating the segments out to use. After that, I created what the fruits would be suspended in, the lovely whipped cream. I just dumped a whole thing of whipped cream in and I whipped it. I always add a little bit of a vanilla too, just to give it a little hint of taste, and of course you're supposed to put sugar in it. Alright, spreading that whipped cream all over, right all over it. And then I'm gonna start putting the fruit in, and I'm just putting it away from the edges because I want to put them in the edges myself to make it look as nice as possible. So staying away from the edges and just filling it with fruit. And going back in with more whipped cream. Before we do the rest, I need to whip up the frosting for the cake. It's a greenish yellow color, and it killed me making this frosting. I kept going back and adding more green and being like, oh, but I don't want to add too much at a time or it might be too much. And in the end, it was too much green and not enough yellow. And I found out that when it's more dried out, it darkens. The frosting was changing colors on me left and right. Anyway, here I am, stocking up on the cake. Ready, set, flip. And there we go, ready for my horrendously colored green frosting. I guess it's not the worst, but every time I looked at it, I just thought of St. Patrick's Day. Definitely not the green yellow of the New Horizons cake, but whatever. It'll still turn your tongue green, and that's what matters, right? And I'm doing these dollops along the edge just to have extra frosting to spread like a 1/4 inch along the side. I decided not to do dips here, and then I would go back and try to pipe the dips on, and we'll see how that goes. Here's a little mini cake. See everything in quick time. The fruit was honestly the part that made me happiest. I don't know, cutting the fruit and the whipped cream and putting it all together. That's the happiest part of this entire cake for me. Alright, and going in with the ridiculous green frosting and trying to make it work. And now here we are, many hours later. I smoothed it as perfectly as I possibly could. Anyway, the ceremoniousness of putting the second layer onto the cake. And now the frosting. Anyway, I'm only going to show you one side of doing these dips because that was the side I tried the hardest and the rest I just stopped caring. So, it's not going to look better than this. Moving on, I'm doing the fruit and just pushing it right in there, grabbing the prettiest pieces. The mandarin oranges in the game looked like they were cut in different ways, but I was way too lazy to cut them and then push them in. So there you have it. And now, finally, for the cookies that are all there for decoration, because every other part of this tastes better than those darn cookies. And even then, they don't look that good. If the colors weren't off, then I did a horrible job, getting the frosting onto the cookie. The hat ended up being the one I was most proud of. And with that, it's time for the bushes. I just threw all the frosting I had left over and all the cake I had left over into the mixer to make some cake balls. With the batter made, I rolled them out into bush shapes. I likened the dough into a bush shape. Then I shoved those in the freezer, and once they were frozen, I melted some chocolate melts, and once again, went through the absolute nightmare of trying to dye them another color. Coloring the chocolates was especially bad because if you put too much color in, because I didn't use an oil-based color, it would start clumping. So I was like, oh, every like a little bit of dye I put in, I was panicking that it was too much, and then I messed up the color, and I wasn't willing to go and try and balance it out because then I might completely ruin the chocolate. Anyway, with a color I didn't love, I dipped 5 of them, and then I tinkered with the color a little bit for the other 5, since the bushes are supposed to be different colors. And I got a color I did like better, but by then I had so little chocolate and it was starting to dry out that instead of having a nice rounded bush of chocolate, they were very sushi. But at this point, I was almost done and I didn't care anymore. All that matters is that we finished, not that we finished well. And going in with more of that royal icing dyed a yellow for the centers. This part was completely pointless because I ended up drowning it with the petals and you couldn't even see the centers. I guess I should have done the centers last. Or out of chocolate. I think the icing was just a little too runny and I was moving around too much. Alright, and here's the bushes being placed all around the cake. Oh yes, there we are. Oh, and the cake needs a couple other accessories like this one. I just grabbed a 1 candle, but I painted it because there were no red ones. Placing that upon the cake. And then we have our dollops of whipped cream. And I didn't have any whipped cream left from the day before, so I just used yogurt. And now placing the cookie. Very nice. And here is the big reveal. This literally took like 15 hours and it looks like a joke. I mean, it's not as bad as it could be. Like, the cake is in cake shape, but yeah. I guess it's really not that bad. It's just, it doesn't live up to the original. No, I need to praise it. I am the best, most amazing cake person in the world. I don't think I'm going to see anyone else do this cake better than me. It is just a beauty worth celebrating, like the 1-year anniversary of New Horizons. Like, what perfection. The cookies are perfect, the bushes are perfect, the frosting is perfect. Everything's perfect. Happy 1-year anniversary, New Horizons. Alright, and now it's time to dismantle the cake and see if it tastes good, because what's the point of decorating an entire thing if it doesn't even taste good in the end? Oh, but before that, I'm taking this top layer and I'm wrapping it in saran wrap, and then I'm going to wrap it in aluminum foil to save it for the 2-year anniversary of New Horizons. So subscribe for a year from now when I make a video of eating my 1-year anniversary New Horizons cake. Show me you're committed to finding out what eating this cake is like in a year. I'll probably live stream it and then I'll make it a video afterwards so you can like double experience it and definitely not miss it. If you're subscribed and you have notifications on. Okay, finally, cutting the cake. I wasn't too worried about it tasting bad. Like, all the ingredients were right. As long as I don't hate yellow cake, it should taste like a cake, you know? And then there's the cake pops, which I guess I could have worried about because I just threw what was left in there. And then I guess I could worry about the sugar cookies because I literally... Alright, the cake. You can tell I don't eat cake much because I struggled to even get any on my fork. I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, the cake. It tasted like cake. Honestly, it tastes like my grandma's cakes that she would make us for our birthdays. She would just put whipped cream frosting on the outside and put fruit on top, and that was it. And it tasted just like that. Although it was quite strange biting into the pineapple and the mandarin oranges because they're quite tart. They're more tart than the strawberries were, and I'm used to strawberries on cake, but not those. So it was a little bit like, whoa, 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 whoa. That was a lot of spice coming from this cake. Anyway, yeah, and the frosting, it was buttercream. I hate buttercream. I honestly don't know if my, additions to the cake to make it more like a homemade cake made it more like a homemade cake, because I don't know if I've ever had a homemade cake in my life. And if I had, I didn't know it was homemade at the time. I don't know. It was cake. I'm not a cake connoisseur. I can't really give you the tea on the cakes. And for the cake pop, it was a cake pop. If you like them, you like them. My dad had one later and he was like, oh, the ratio of frosting to cake is just so perfect. The texture in my mouth is like a 4th of July celebration. He didn't actually say that, but he did say it was a nice consistency, so that was great. Oh, my little sister, she, unprovoked, gave me her ratings of every little thing. So here were hers. She said the cake was a 9 out of 10. The cookies were a 7 out of 10. And the cake pops were a 10 out of 10. So I guess that is a good summary. As for me and the sugar cookie, I hated it as much as I would normally hate a sugar cookie because they're just so gross. There's so many cookies out there. Have yourself a molasses cookie, a peanut butter blossom cookie, a no-bake cookie, a freaking chocolate chip cookie. Go buy some Oreos. Like, there's better options on this planet than a sugar cookie. I know the point is to decorate them, but like, if you really just want to decorate something, why make it edible?
You know, you can literally do the exact same thing with Play-Doh, and then you have something you can keep forever. I guess you can keep sugar cookies forever. People might think you're weird displaying food, though. Although I will say one time me and my roommate, it was Easter, and my roommate made bunny rolls, and they burned. Like, just enough that they weren't, like, crisp and falling apart, but enough that they were rock hard. And so I took out my acrylic paints, and me and my roommates painted them and put them on the mantle. It was great. So, you know, like, why do sugar cookies when you can burn your bread and paint it, too? Anyway, here's me with a final review.
So, there you have it. The cake is done. I almost feel like my experience baking this cake was that one drawing of like the perfect horse head with like a really crappy body, except that only like the nostril of the horse is actually I don't know. As like I had more energy towards the beginning of like the baking part, like the part where visually it's hard to go wrong with. And then like any willpower, like by the time it was down to decorating and making the cake look good, just kind of went. I'm gonna say it's good for a first attempt, but not worth bragging about in the general world of cake decorating. And after this whole experience, I definitely have a lot more respect for cake decorators. In the end, was making this cake worth it? I feel like the general consensus between me and my family is like, well, the cake is nice, but you could have just made this other thing and it's 20 times easier and it's 5 billion times tastier. Like cinnamon rolls, super easy to make. I'm saying way easier to make than this cake. Like obviously they aren't something you pop out in 5 minutes, but they really aren't that hard to make. Candy cookies. People call them no-bake cookies, I guess, normally. Super, super easy to make. My little sister makes them all the time. After like partaking of the cake, my little sister was like, but why not just candy cookies? And I agree. The funny thing is, I think what drained me most about this cake wasn't even the cake itself, it was the darn cookies. Because you had to cut them by hand. So normally like making sugar cookies, it's like a 5-second thing to cut the shape out. Instead it becomes a 2-minute thing. And then decorating them. Here's the problem with decorating them. If they were like any normal sugar cookie you were making, it wouldn't really matter what colors you were doing. Like you could put a couple drops of brown in, call it good. But because I'm trying to like match to the game, I was constantly mixing colors in, like, oh, not enough green, a little more green. Oh, the green's not right. Let's put some red in to try and dull it a little bit. And So I feel like half of baking this cake was just trying to get all the dyes freaking right for the cookies, which I don't even like sugar cookies. They're like the worst cookie. My recommendation, if you make this cake, is to like skip over the sugar cookie part, unless you like really love sugar cookies, and just paint it on cardboard. I would have a lot better time matching the colors using acrylic paint and cardboard, and it would taste about the same. Sorry, I really hate sugar cookies. Like the cake would have tasted pretty much the same if I just took the original cake and instead of like trying to fill it with all the whipped cream and the fruits and things, if I just did a whipped cream frosting, which is what I prefer. Maybe that's a white trash opinion, but I do not like buttercream. Cream cheese frosting, I do enjoy. But whipped cream is my favorite, so just put whipped cream over that. Super easy to spread, not a huge hassle. And then you just throw fruit on top of that. Like, basically it's gonna taste the same. So the final verdict, would I ever make this cake again? No. But am I willing to try decorating cakes again? Absolutely yes. There were times where I could just feel my soul singing as I just kind of got lost in decorating the cake. And especially if I'm not trying to hold it up to this perfectly modeled video game cake, then I think I'll be a lot happier just having fun with the cake decorating process instead of being like, oh no, it's not measuring up to a pixel cake. Thank you for listening to my ranting. If you want to make this cake yourself, because either you're crazy or you're actually good at making cakes, then I will have another video linked that probably tells you how to do it way better than mine did, and their results are quite a bit better than mine were. And you know, maybe you should subscribe. The next cake I bake, maybe I'll try to remake another one from Animal Crossing, but one with not so many sugar cookies. Maybe. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've had a great last year with the game, or however long you've had with it. And I hope you have the loveliest of lovely day. Bye.